Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine a life where you work just 25 hours a week yet earn crores. It might sound like a fantasy, but it's a reality achieved through deliberate principles and disciplined execution. In life and in business, time is your most precious commodity. You can't scale time. No matter how smart, capable, or ambitious you are, there are only 24 hours in a day. So if you're trying to grow, whether it's your income, your business, or your impact, and you're relying solely on your own time and energy, you're going to hit a wall. The key to getting beyond that wall lies in understanding and utilizing leverage. Leverage means doing more with less, not by cutting corners or working harder, but by working smarter. It starts with recognizing that the biggest gains come not from what you do, but from how you set things up to run without you. The most successful people I know aren't the ones burning the midnight oil every night. They're the ones who have created systems that work. Even when they're not around, they figured out how to make their knowledge, decision-making, and strategy repeatable. They've embedded themselves into scalable mechanisms. When I started out, I did everything myself. I made every decision, ran every task, and got involved in every detail. That approach got me started, but it was also a trap. It created a bottleneck, me. I learned that unless I could extract myself from the middle of everything, I was always going to be limited by my own capacity. That realization was painful, but it was necessary. The pain forced me to reflect, and the reflection led to growth. The turning point came when I stopped asking, how can I do this? And started asking, how can this be done without me? That single question changed everything. It forced me to break down every process, decision, and workflow into something that could be understood, replicated, and eventually delegated. That's when I began building systems, not just technical systems, but systems of people, roles, feedback loops, and accountability. Building a system means stepping back and looking at the patterns. It means documenting what works, automating where possible, and delegating to the right people. It's not about letting go of control. It's about creating control through structure. When done well, a system becomes a self-correcting engine. It produces consistent results, flags issues early, and adapts over time. It frees you from the noise and lets you focus on the signal. Delegation is a form of leverage, but it only works if you have the right people and the right culture. You can't just hand things off and hope for the best. You have to build trust, clarity, and mutual understanding. That takes time and effort, upfront investment. But once it's in place, the returns are extraordinary. You're no longer solving problems alone. You've built a team that can think, act, and improve on its own. To delegate effectively, you need to know what you're delegating. You have to distill complex ideas into principles, not rules, not checklists, but principles that guide behavior across situations. That's how you build a resilient, adaptive team. If you find yourself answering the same questions or solving the same problems repeatedly, it's a sign that your principles haven't been communicated or embedded well enough. The ego gets in the way here. Many people cling to tasks because they think no one else can do them as well. That belief is usually wrong. And even if it's right today, it won't be right tomorrow if you invest in the growth of your people. The truth is, if you're the smartest person in the room on every topic, you've hired poorly or you've held on too tightly. Either way, you're the ceiling. The freedom that comes from leverage is profound. It gives you the space to think strategically, to step back, to anticipate. It gives you the flexibility to rest when needed and still have the machine running. It allows you to focus your attention on high leverage decisions, the few things that really move the needle. And most importantly, it creates resilience. If something happens to you, if you're out sick, traveling, or simply need a break, the system carries on. That's what real success looks like. Not just high output, but high output with sustainability. Not just achievement, but repeatable achievement. You don't get there by doing everything yourself. You get there by building a system and then getting out of the way. Most people struggle because they fight reality. They get emotionally attached to how they want things to be instead of looking at how things actually are. That emotional resistance blinds them, slows them down, and often leads to bad decisions. But the truth is, success in life and business and investing in anything starts with being brutally honest with yourself about reality. What's really happening? Why? What does it mean? What should you do about it? These are hard questions, but if you can answer them well, you gain a power that most people never develop, the power to navigate through complexity with clarity. Facing reality isn't easy. It can be uncomfortable. It forces you to see your weaknesses, your mistakes, your vulnerabilities, but avoiding that discomfort is a trap. The pain of truth is short-term. The pain of self-deception compounds over time. If you keep lying to yourself, if you keep justifying things or pretending problems aren't there, eventually reality wins. It always does. So it's better to partner with it than to fight it. There was a point early in my journey when I got hit hard. I made a big call that went wrong, and the fallout was real. Financially, reputationally, emotionally, I was shaken. But looking back, that experience taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. I realized I hadn't seen the situation clearly. I was operating on assumptions, not facts. I had confused what I wanted to be true with what was actually true. That moment of failure forced me to open my eyes, and once I did, everything changed. The ability to see reality clearly is like a superpower. But it's not something you're born with. It's something you train. You train it by developing radical honesty with yourself. You learn to listen to feedback without defensiveness. You pay attention to outcomes, not intentions. You seek out the truth even when it hurts, because you know it's better to be corrected than to be wrong. You make reality your foundation. This also means accepting the nature of reality, that it's full of uncertainty, complexity, and constant change. You can't control it, but you can adapt to it. You can observe, learn, evolve. The people who do best over the long term aren't the ones who are the smartest or the fastest. They're the ones who are the most adaptable. They constantly recalibrate their beliefs based on new evidence. They're humble in the face of complexity and confident in their ability to work through it. If you want to improve, you have to acknowledge what's holding you back. That might be a bad habit, a limiting belief, or a fear you're not facing. Whatever it is, reality is giving you signals. Problems are signals. Friction is a signal. Pain is a signal. These signals are your greatest teachers if you listen. But most people ignore them, or worse, resent them. They blame others, shift responsibility, or numb themselves instead of learning. And that's where they stay stuck. Deal with reality effectively, you need principles, a framework that helps you make sense of what's happening and act accordingly. Principles are tested truths. They're not rigid rules, but flexible guidelines that help you navigate uncertainty. Over time, the more you encounter reality and reflect on it, the more your principles improve. And the better your principles, the better your decisions. You also need to detach your ego from your beliefs. When you make your identity dependent on being right, you become blind to being wrong. But when you see mistakes as information and criticism as insight, you start to grow rapidly. The goal isn't to be right. The goal is to get it right. And getting it right often means acknowledging you are wrong and adjusting. People who master this principle rise faster and fall less hard. They don't waste time pretending, avoiding, or blaming. They simply look at what's in front of them and deal with it directly, intelligently, and consistently. That's what creates long-term progress. It's not flashy, it's not emotional, it's grounded, it's real. Reality is the ultimate test. It's always speaking to you. The question is whether you're listening. If you are, if you train yourself to see clearly and act wisely, you put yourself in a position where even setbacks become stepping stones. You build resilience, insight, and momentum. And over time, that mindset becomes the engine of everything you achieve. The single most important lessons in life almost never come from success. They come from pain. Pain is nature's signal that something needs attention. It's uncomfortable by design. It pushes you to stop, to notice, to reassess. But most people try to escape it. They numb it, avoid it, deny it. And in doing so, they lose the opportunity it brings. Because pain, when met with honest reflection, leads to progress. I've seen this pattern repeat itself over and over, not just in my own life, but in others who grow beyond what they thought was possible. The ones who thrive aren't the ones who avoid pain. They're the ones who turn into it. They allow it to reveal weaknesses, gaps in knowledge, blind spots, emotional biases, and then they study those signals not with guilt or shame, but with curiosity and determination. That combination, pain followed by thoughtful reflection, is what drives real change. There's no escaping pain. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. You're going to misread people, markets, timing, and yourself. That's part of the game. The question isn't whether it happens, it's what you do when it does. If you brush it aside, blame others, or hide from it, you stay stuck. But if you say, why did this happen? What can I learn from it? What would I do differently next time? Then you've turned the pain into progress. You've grown. The key is to shift your relationship with failure. Most people see it as something shameful, something to avoid at all costs. That mindset is crippling. It leads to risk aversion, insecurity, and fragile egos. But if you can reframe failure as feedback, if you can see it as a necessary part of learning, you free yourself, you stop fearing mistakes and start extracting value from them. That's when you really begin to compound knowledge and experience. One of the most formative experiences in my life came after a painful failure that cost me almost everything I had built. It was humbling. I realized I had been too confident, too certain, too narrow in my perspective. That pain shook me, but instead of collapsing under it, I studied it. I asked myself, what did I miss? What assumptions was I making? What would a smarter version of me have done? That process of reflection led me to some of the most important principles I've ever developed, principles that shaped everything that followed. Reflection isn't just about thinking, it's about rigorous thinking. You have to get beyond the surface, beyond the story you're telling yourself. You have to be brutally honest. You have to zoom out, look at patterns, challenge your assumptions, and invite others to poke holes in your logic. That takes humility, it takes patience, and it takes discipline. But if you do it well, you build a feedback loop that accelerates growth exponentially. This process only works if you're willing to separate your ego from the outcome. That's hard. We're all wired to protect ourselves, to defend our identities. But if you can stop taking failure personally, if you can treat it as data, you gain leverage. You start to see that each painful moment is a potential inflection point. And the deeper the pain, the greater the potential for growth if you choose to engage with it fully. Some people hear this and think it sounds cold or robotic. It's not. It's deeply human. Pain is emotional. Reflection is emotional. But the goal isn't to avoid emotion. It's to work with it constructively. Let the emotion signal that something's wrong. Let the reflection guide you to a better path and then move forward wiser and more resilient than before. This principle doesn't just apply to work. It applies to relationships, to health, to personal development, the fights, the losses, the disappointments. They're all part of the curriculum. You don't have to enjoy the pain, but you have to respect it. It's trying to teach you something. If you listen and you reflect and you apply what you've learned, you'll make fewer of the same mistakes and more decisions rooted in experience. Progress is earned. It's not given.
Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path leads to a different future. Your 30s are that pivotal junction, a time when decisions carry weight.
Are the ones who don't look away. The difference between people who get a lot done and people who feel constantly overwhelmed isn't how many things they can juggle, is how ruthless they are about what they say yes to. There's this misconception that productivity is about doing more. It's not. It's about doing less, but doing the right things well. That means constantly deciding what matters most and having the discipline to ignore everything else. Most people fail not because they didn't try, but because they tried too many things that didn't really matter. Time is the scarcest resource. Once it's spent, you don't get it back. So how you allocate your time reflects what you truly value. Not what you say you value, but what your actions reveal. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, even if you're not aware of it. And when you don't consciously choose, you allow other people, other agendas, and reactive demands to make those choices for you. Over time, that drift adds up. You end up busy but not productive, active but not advancing. Early in my career, I fell into this trap. I said yes to too many meetings, too many tasks, too many opportunities that weren't aligned with the core of what I wanted to build. On paper, it looked like I was getting a lot done, but in reality, my attention was fragmented. I wasn't making meaningful progress on the things that mattered most. The work was shallow. The decisions weren't as sharp, and the stress was higher than it needed to be. It took some painful lessons for me to realize that prioritization isn't optional. It's essential. You can't be everything to everyone. You can't chase every idea. You have to choose. And to choose well, you need clarity. You need to understand what your goals are, what your values are, and what the highest leverage activities are that will move you toward them. Once you have that clarity, decisions become easier, not easy, easier. Because even then, saying no will often feel uncomfortable. Saying no is hard because it forces confrontation. It can disappoint people. It can feel like you're letting opportunities pass by. But not saying no is far more dangerous because it leads to dilution. You dilute your time, your energy, your effectiveness. And over time, that dilution shows up in your results. If everything is a priority, nothing is. If you don't have clear boundaries, you'll always be at the mercy of the urgent instead of acting in service of the important. One of the best things I learned to do was to build a framework for evaluating requests and tasks. I started asking, is this aligned with my highest goals? Is this the best use of my time, or is someone else better suited for it? What are the consequences of not doing it? What am I sacrificing by saying yes to this? Those questions helped cut through the noise. They forced me to slow down and decide consciously, not react emotionally. Another important distinction is between being busy and being effective. People often equate motion with progress, but if the motion is in 10 directions at once, the net gain is often close to zero. Effectiveness comes from concentrated force, from putting sustained effort behind a small number of high leverage activities. That's where breakthroughs come from. That's where compounding starts to take hold. But to get there, you need to clear out the clutter, both in your schedule and in your mind. Delegation is part of this. Once you understand what your unique contributions are, the things only you can do well, you start to see that a lot of what fills your day isn't in that zone. That's when you begin handing off tasks, building systems, and creating space. And with that space, you can think, you can focus, you can get ahead of problems instead of reacting to them. That's what strategic work looks like. And it's only possible when you've learned to say no thoughtfully, consistently and unapologetically.
The irony is that the more successful you become, the more you'll be asked to do, the more options you'll have, the more people will want your time. That's when saying no becomes not just a tactic, but a survival skill. It's the only way to protect your ability to do deep work and make smart decisions. It's the only way to ensure you're building something meaningful instead of just being busy. Progress requires focus. Focus requires discipline, and discipline requires the ability to say no, not out of laziness or avoidance, but out of commitment to what truly matters. Most people radically underestimate what compounding can do, not because they don't understand the math, but because they don't understand the mindset. Compounding isn't just about money. It's about time, decisions, habits, knowledge, relationships, and systems. It's about setting small things in motion and allowing them to grow uninterrupted over time. And it's about resisting the temptation to chase quick wins at the cost of lasting outcomes. If you want extraordinary results, you have to be willing to think long term. That's where the real leverage is. Not in doing more, but in doing the right things consistently for a long time. It's slow at first, painfully slow. You won't see results for a while, and that's why most people give up. They get distracted, they chase the next opportunity, the next trend, the next shortcut, but the people who win truly win are the ones who stay focused, disciplined, and patient. In my experience, some of the most important returns I've seen, financial and otherwise, didn't come from taking big leaps. They came from making good decisions again and again and letting them compound. A solid decision-making process, repeated consistently, is more powerful than trying to get every decision right. It creates a feedback loop. You reflect, you learn, you adjust, and over time, your average outcome improves. That's compounding. The same applies to relationships. You can't build meaningful trust overnight. You earn it little by little through honesty, reliability, and transparency. Over time, that trust becomes a form of capital. It opens doors, strengthens teams, and allows for high-level collaboration. But you can't fake it, and you can't rush it. If you try, you break the process and lose the compounding effect. When it comes to knowledge, the effect is even more striking. Every hour you invest in learning, not just passive information consumption, but real learning, stacks on top of the previous one. Eventually, you stop thinking in fragments and start seeing systems. You begin connecting ideas in ways others can't. And as you do, your ability to solve problems, to innovate, to make sound decisions, it all improves exponentially. That kind of intellectual leverage can't be bought. It can only be built, but compounding only works when you preserve the process. That means avoiding catastrophic losses of capital, trust, energy, or time. A single bad decision, made impulsively or emotionally, can set you back years. So part of compounding is about playing defense. It's about knowing when not to act, when not to risk, and when to protect what you've built. That's just as important as pushing forward. There's also a psychological side to this. To benefit from compounding, you have to be comfortable with delayed gratification. You have to be okay with being underestimated. You have to be willing to do the work without needing immediate validation. That kind of internal stability is rare. Most people want results now. They want recognition now. They want to feel like their effort is paying off now. But compounding doesn't reward impatience. It rewards discipline. That's why having clear principles is so important. If you don't have a strong foundation, if you're not grounded in a long-term view, you'll get pulled in 1,000 directions. You'll constantly question yourself. You'll abandon strategies too soon, Principles help you stay the course. They keep you anchored when everything else feels uncertain. They're what allow you to keep investing, keep building, keep showing up even when the payoff is still far down the road. One of the things I've learned is that compounding is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel successful. But then, somewhere down the line, the curve starts to bend. Results accelerate. Opportunities emerge. Momentum kicks in. And it seems sudden to everyone else, but you know the truth. You know it was the result of years of quiet effort, thoughtful decisions, and consistent action. The most powerful outcomes are usually the result of small, smart choices made consistently over time, not once, not for a week, but over and over again through both easy and difficult periods. It's not about brilliance. It's about alignment and persistence. So whether you're building wealth, mastering a skill, scaling a business, or growing as a person, understand this. Compounding is always at work. The question is whether it's working for you or against you. Because every choice, every day, every small step, it all adds up. Over time, the difference between those who respect that truth and those who ignore it becomes impossible to miss. Achieving a high-income lifestyle with limited working hours isn't about shortcuts. It's about applying timeless principles with discipline and consistency. By leveraging systems, embracing reality, learning from mistakes, managing time wisely, and harnessing compounding, you too can transform your work, life balance, and financial future.